Good morning. We're going to continue in Luke 19 with our devotional this week. We ended last week looking at the story of Zacchaeus, the chief tax collector. And Jesus, it is in Jericho. This is occurring in the city of Jericho. Jericho is about 17 miles from Jerusalem. And he's on his way now to Jerusalem for the last time. So he's preparing and getting ready. So everything that he's saying here is with that in mind and pointing towards that event. So as we get to Luke 19, right after he talks about Zacchaeus and says that the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost, right? That's why he came. And then in verse 11, while they were listening to this, he went on to tell them a parable because he was near Jerusalem and people thought that the kingdom of God was going to appear at once. So he's on his way to Jerusalem, and there are people believing. They're believing he's the Messiah, and they're thinking that this is the moment, that it may be coming to a culmination. So he said this parable: a noble man, or a man of noble birth, went to a distant country to have himself appointed king and to return. So he called 10 of his servants and gave them 10 minas, and put this money to work, he said, until I come back. Now, this is very similar to, in Matthew, what we call the parable of the talents, but there are some differences. It's in the parable of the talents, there were 3 servants only. Here there are 10 servants. They were given talents. Talents was a larger amount of money. A mina is about 3 months worth of money or wages, and so this would still be a lot if you add it all up, but it's less than a talent. So there was more given to 3 people and actually in Matthew, 1 received 5, 1 received 2, and 1 received 1 talent. Here there are 10, and they all received the same amount. So there are some differences. The man is going off to become a king, which is not uncommon. Actually, Herod, the king, the Jewish king under Rome, allowed to serve during this time under the Roman power, went to Rome to petition and for the right to be made king, kind of a puppet king, but he went to Rome in order to be made king. And then when he died, he divided up the Palestine among his sons, and one of them also went, at least one also went to Rome to make his case on why he should be the one to follow his father. So when Jesus is saying this in Jericho, this is something that they would understand. And when Herod's son went to Rome, there were people that sent a delegation after him because they didn't want him to be king because he wasn't a good king. So these are all things that they would understand and have actually were in recent memory. So Jesus is saying a man of noble birth goes to faraway land to be made king, and he gives 10 of his servants each 1 mina, which is about 3 months worth of wages each. And he tells them, put this money to work, he said, until I come back. So there's the express intention. There's no confusion on why they're being given this. They understand why. But his subjects hated him and sent a delegation after him to say, we don't want him to be our king. He was made king, however, and returned home. Then he sent for the servants to whom he had given the money in order to find out what they had gained with it. So these servants are not the same ones who didn't want him to be king. Those were the subjects. Those were other people. The servants, he calls them in to say, okay, now what have you done with what I had given you? The first one came and said, sir, your mina has earned 10 more. In the parable in Matthew, the one with 5 talents turns it into 10, doubles it. The one with 2 talents turns it into 4, doubles it. The one with the 1 talent hid it away and did nothing with it. In this case, the one who has only 1, they all receive the same amount, turns it into 10. That's 1,000-fold. Well done, my good servant. His master replied, because you have been trustworthy in a very little matter, take charge of 10 cities. The second came in and said, sir, your mina has earned you 5 more. So from 1 to 5. The master said, take charge of 5 cities. So he doesn't expect him to have less, and doesn't get on him for not producing the same amount as the first servant, but he rewards him with the same words that he did the one who made 10. 1 to 10, 1 to 5. Then another servant came in and said, sir, here is your mina. I have kept it laid away in a place of cloth. I was afraid of you because you are a hard man, and you take out what you did not put in and reap what you did not sow. And his master replied, I will judge you by your own words. You wicked servant, you knew, did you, that I am a hard man, taking out what I did not sow, why then didn't you put my money on deposit so that when I came back, I could have collected it with interest? Then he said to those standing by, take this mina away from him and give it to the one who has 10 minas. Sir, they said, he already has 10. He replied, I tell you that even everyone who has more will be given. But as for the one who has nothing, even what they have will be taken away. But those enemies of mine who did not want me to be king over them, bring them here and kill them in front of me. So some of the differences here. What is he communicating with the parable? Some of the things we see right away, that the mina is considered a small amount. They all receive the same. So it's not necessarily referring to the different amounts of ability or talent, because we all have different amounts of ability or talent, whether it's athletic ability, intellectual ability, right? The different capitals. We're not all the same, and God has given to some of us greater amounts of abilities than others, of capabilities. But these, they're being measured, right, to see what they can do. So the one that turns it into 10, he's demonstrated he has a higher level of ability, because he's taken 1 mina and turned it into 10. And because he's used his potential, because he's maximized what God has given him, then he is rewarded. And the one who had 1 and turned it into 5, the same thing. He doesn't have the same ability probably as the one who turned it into 10, but he used the ability he had to take 1 and turn it into 5. So then they are both rewarded, not with treasures, but with more responsibility. They're now over 5 cities and 10 cities. The third one had what he was given and did nothing with it, wasn't able to produce anything. So I think that there's the wording here. You were trustworthy with something, with what I gave you. Whatever it is that God has given us, have we been trustworthy? And trustworthy here is in the sense of being fruitful, of investing and managing it well, because then they're given even more to manage, right? So that's it. It seems to me to be what it's referring to. Are we, with what God has given to us, are we trustworthy? Are we and managing well and being fruitful with what He's given us? Now remember, what they produced with it. That's what we need to be careful with, because again, what is it that the kingdom of God values? What does God value? We can be very materialistic and in our human thinking about more wealth or more things or more doing. But the things that the kingdom values, if you look at the Sermon on the Mount, and what does the kingdom of God value? What does God want us to do? How does He want us to treat other people? So we need to be thinking, what are the things that God values? And is my life producing and increasing the values of God's kingdom, the things He values over the things that men value? So think about that. Whatever you've been given, we've all been given something, and given equally by the Lord. Are we using and investing those things to be able to build and invest in the things that God desires? Remember, I said earlier on, to be good stewards of what God has given us, we need to invest it in the things that God values and God desires. So be thinking about that just as we get into this parable, and I'll see everybody tomorrow. All right, God bless.